Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it. Not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences. Such as...
Yeah, the best thing we could do is minimize harm. So if something's abnormal, you need to ask, well, is it harming anybody or anything? And if not, then you need to calm down.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey everybody, it's Ben. First off, I applaud all of the submissions in our giveaway of a Tourette's podcast sticker and a hat from the racing team of Esther Quaintmere, our fantastic guest from episode 8 of this season. She's a race car driver in the UK with Tourette. If you'll recall, Esther recently raced with the Tourette's podcast logo on her car, and you might also recall that that was the basis for a trivia question. I guess less a trivia question and more of a pop quiz, as the answer was found within the discussion with Esther in that episode. If my voice sounds deeper, it's just because I'm doing this in the morning. So the question was what kind of car it was, so the kind of car she raced. What was the name of it, or the make and model? And people gave their guesses. These are definitely guesses because the answer itself was definitely in the episode. Got some people saying Porsche, Volvo, Audi, and some car brands I'm not familiar with. Those are good guesses, but the correct answer was... the Citroën 2CV. I think I pronounced that right. And if you've never heard of that car before episode 8, I stand with you. But a cool congratulations to John from Pennsylvania for the correct answer. The Citroën 2CV. Fun fact, he says, the French name for this car is deux chevaux, which I probably just butchered too. He says this is where the 2CV comes from, which means 2 horses. This refers to how little power the car has. The original version really only had 2 horsepower. They have more power now, but are still fairly slow compared to most other cars on the road. Esther mentioned this on the podcast when she said how slow it goes on the track, and how that makes it so much fun to drive, because you focus more on technique and momentum rather than outright speed. End quote from John. And I love that. Historically, I'm 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm just kind of always going. But a big part of my life is just walking. I absolutely love walking, just getting out, walking, taking things in. And of course, I always have my camera with me so I can capture interesting details, or if there's anything interesting that happens, capture that. And just by slowing down and looking closer and more widely at the things around me, I pick up nuance and detail that I don't process when I'm, say driving down the street versus walking that street. It's just a big reward to find something interesting or beautiful or odd in the details around you, which I think about more and more. It helps me get to know my town better. But sometimes by slowing down, this is a note to self, by the way. Sometimes by slowing down, you can participate more in the nuances, and that's a nice place to be and a nice place to think and interact. And I like how John just kind of hit on that nicely in the comments about the fun of the car that Esther drives on the racetrack. The Citroën 2CV. Congratulations to John for getting that right. He gets a decent-sized Tourette's podcast sticker and a hat from Esther's racing team. John says the prizes are a special Christmas present for his 10-year-old son, Jack, who was diagnosed with TS at the age of 5, and, quote, has never let that diagnosis define him as a person. He wants to be a chef or an actor when he grows up, unless, of course, he can be a professional soccer player. End quote. Jack, congratulations. That's awesome. And thank you, John. And thanks to Esther Quaintmere for making the giveaway possible. One more thing from John in Pennsylvania. He's planning to run the Disney Half Marathon in January to raise money for the Tourette Association. And he's got a personal donation page set up. I'll have that in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com. By the way, what kind of Tourette's podcast gear do you want? I've been thinking about hoodies and shirts and 1-inch buttons and so on, just starting there. What would you like to see? We're underway with some of that, but let me know in an email. You can send it to tourettespodcast@gmail.com. I didn't think at first this was something people would be interested in, but lo and behold, request after request has come in for swag. So we're already working on some of that, but also working to pump up the Patreon page, patreon.com/tourettespodcast, so we can give our supporters there a little thank you. Speaking of supporters, the primary sponsor, this podcast is made possible with the support of the Tourette Association of America, online at tourette.org. And I'll catch you up on some things going on at the Tourette Association after our conversation this week. But if you want to beat me to the punch and try to guess what these announcements are going to be, feel free to go to Tourette.org and poke around. You're guaranteed to find something interesting about Tourette Syndrome, a disorder that I have, but one I'm still learning about. Even though I was diagnosed about 35 years ago, TS is that simple to understand, but it's not, which makes learning about it a pretty fun and mysterious journey. So our guest this week is Daphne, who I've been talking with, a number of people have been talking with in the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook. Daphne's got a lot to say, and we stuff a lot into this talk. For the creatives out there, she's accomplished a lot. She's done radio and other kinds of audio production, photography, comedy. She's worked with a lot of mediums, or media, I should say. But she says she's kind of run into a rut, and it sounds tough. And if you're the kind of person who, you're a creative, your life kind of thrives on what you're able to do and create. If you hear that another creative is in a rut, like that's kind of a shared pain. Just like, oh man. And if you're the kind of person who obsessively, and I mean obsessively, gets into the weeds of a particular interest topic, and I'm definitely this way, like you find something you're interested in, or you figure out a skill that you didn't know you had, or a talent, or just something you're really interested in and hadn't considered before, and you get excited about it, and you're Googling it, maybe I'm just describing me, and reading it and watching YouTube videos about it and joining discussion groups, and you're out in the world and you're doing it. Let's just pick photography, for example. You're obsessing and even, fetishizing the objects, if that's the right word, looking at different kinds of camera bodies and lenses and styles and editing approaches and creative little things you can do to make your work stand out, learning about this obsessively until you're a quick expert and you transition to the next thing that you can master. A lot of Touretters have told me they work this way. I definitely do. This is something maybe everybody can relate to, whether you have TS or not. Everybody's like this maybe to some degree with their interests, but it seems kind of amplified, I guess, with TS. This is just, there's nothing scientific about this. This is just anecdotal based on the people I talk to. But it's almost like a high. I guess you could say like a high of interest. But what happens when you're like, okay, what now? And you're having difficulty with the fact that there's nothing really motivating you or interesting you or tempting you. That's got to be really tough. And Daphne talks about being at that point and what it might mean. There's also a lot of talk about identity and having a sense of community. It was a really rich episode. We'll get to it right now. Here it is, my talk with Daphne. Yeah. No, this is as honest as you want to be. I mean, this is going to be fun, and I've been looking forward to it.
Absolutely, me too. Yeah, for sure. I know there's so many things in common that I find particularly with you, and then also listening to the episodes. Every episode, I'm like, it's a bunch of. I've learned. Okay, so yeah, I've learned a lot about my own, even just having Tourette's and what Tourette's was at all from your show only. Wow. And then I've studied elsewhere, but I wasn't really that into the Tourette thing. It was more just kind of about the autism thing for a bit, and I was like, okay. And then I realized Tourette was part of it, so I was looking into that a bit, but I never really learned too much about it. But the more I listen to the show and hear people talk about certain things. Anyway, are we started? We can start whenever you wish. I'm sorry.
Sure. I mean, we could even just kind of pick it up from here if you want. I mean, I guess to kind of put the spike in the ground, could you, I guess, identify yourself and tell us your name and the general part of the world you come from and how you would introduce yourself to this audience?
Sure. My name is Daphne Alice, and I'm from the North Shore area of Boston, not Boston, but the North Shore above Boston, like 20 minutes outside Boston. And I currently, for work, I know that I was listening to an episode earlier today, actually, and you said they were talking about, I don't want to get into, I don't want to define you by what you do for work, but I do CAD right now, drafting. But okay. I've done many different things, but that's what I'm doing currently. And it's a bit, some of the work I do lately has been underwhelming. So it's a bit of a frustration for me, but, anyway.
I totally get that about, kind of channeling things out and kind of having a product that you can feel good about. But if you don't, it kind of feels like a void, or kind of like, am I talking about myself, or does this kind of apply to you too?
No, I totally agree. Yeah, certainly. I like, Yeah, I need like a certain level of kind of input and stimulus throughout the day, and like challenges, and I just need a certain type of a level of challenge.
Yeah.
And I used to get it really easily by being, by special interests, as they call them. Some people maybe don't like that term. I'm not really sure. But if there's a good reason not to like that term, that's fine. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anybody, but interests that like particularly interests that people with neurodivergence have, autism, such things like that. And so those are the sort of things that kind of drive a lot of people with autism and neurodivergent conditions. And it's true for me because I would fall in love with, I fell in love with many topics. I got into computers, got into photography, and I got into audio production, and I got into music. And so all those were things that I really was into, and I could just talk about them like crazy, and people would get bored of hearing me talk about it.
Yeah.
And But these days, I don't really have anything like that. I'm in a kind of weird funk, and it's been depressing as F.
yeah. That's an odd feeling because it's kind of funny the sequence that you just listed with, getting into computers and audio production, and then onto it was exactly the same thing with me. I've kind of hit every medium in a variety of different ways, and I get really obsessive with. I think just kind of like becoming a quick expert at what I'm interested in. So if it's audio stuff, like I just obsessively want to learn about it and learn history and learn context and then go ahead and buy the most expensive
and that's all you want to do, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
It leads to sometimes to what people call gas or gear acquisition syndrome because I just want to tear through things and master them, and it's a really not having that as you were saying. I mean that's a really weird place to be.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, yeah. No, I still have it to some degree. Like right now, I've had a little wine to calm down, so I probably am more like into certain topics than I would normally be. But which isn't good. I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink to feel happiness. But unfortunately, it's like this kind of like a depression or something. But like, when your special interests are gone, you just are like you're kind of a ghost walking through the world. So I've kind of been like that for a while. Not to be too much of a downer, but I've been really hopeful and I stay positive and everything's pretty good otherwise. But it's been so, I focus a lot on comedy. I know you and I were talking about, but I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to one thing you said you were talking about the gear acquisition syndrome. Yeah, totally, for sure. I went through that. And a bit about my background actually. So I went to, oh my goodness, where? I don't know. Just, fuck, excuse me. Okay. That was accident. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, and no big deal. I don't censor any of that stuff. So
that's fine. Yeah, no, absolutely. I was concerned and I asked people on the forum about it, Yeah. And everybody seemed really fine with such things. So that was cool.
Yeah.
But oh boy, now I just realized that I'm actually talking to you on a recording and I gotta stop. I gotta not think about that. So yeah, no, I was like, before we do the recording, I should mention to him about, I was like, he'll probably be, I was going to ask you what sort of microphone and gear you're recording your dialogue through, and I was going to tell you about mine.
Yeah, right now I used to use Electro Voice RE20 pretty consistently, and
for sure, yep.
I love that microphone. I switched back over to
real
my,
good.
It's just nice and clear, but I switched back over to the SM7B. Just to kind of have a different,
the two
it's kind of weird.
Workhorse standbys, yes, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. They're sort of like the rival radio microphones. Yeah. And I was with the with the RE20 for so long, and really kind of living inside that sound. And some of the previous seasons sound a bit different because of that microphone. And I just wanted something sonically different, just something a little bit different that had the same core kind of sound, but a different kind of sheen to it.
Yeah, without changing too much of character. I mean, I feel like microphones are weird, and I never really did. I don't know. It's hard to say whether I got a good idea of like the quality of one versus another. I mean, I can tell easily by listening, but I feel like I end up EQing things so much that it doesn't really, not so much, but I feel like generally I can EQ things well.
Right.
So I got a few nice things, and because I used to do this. So anyway, back about my background. Everything's tying together here, right? So my background was, I've done a lot of different things, but I did normal jobs, worked at like bagel shops, this, that, and the other thing. But then I got into, I've been a musician I played guitar since I was 12. And then I taught myself every instrument I could. If I got a keyboard, I'd play that. And I'd try to teach myself keyboard, that sort of stuff. So now I've collected a bunch of instruments of to some degree under my belt. Some of them not so much. Some of them a little bit more than others. I mean, guitar I've been playing for 12 years, so I'm pretty good with that one. And mandolin, I think, was probably the least. I recorded a song on that, and I played it well because it's a stringed instrument. My fingers are pretty intelligent after years of, you teach your fingers to be smart instead of like dumb. Your fingers start off really dumb, right? And so you have to teach some teacher said that to me. I don't remember who it was, but I loved it. I'm like, your fingers start off dumb and you need to teach them to be smart. And he wasn't wrong. That was the way my brain memorized it at the time. Okay, hello. And so then at 12, I was playing. I started playing guitar because my mom had one, and then I found them here and there. My father was a musician, and my mother liked to play guitar too. And we got a musical family, which again, back to the podcast, is like a lot of people say that. I'm like, whoa, that's an interesting coincidence. I feel.
Oh yeah, so common.
But yeah, like the music, like the playing instruments and guitar. Like my father, he moved to Nashville with my mother and father and siblings. They moved when I was a bit older, down to Nashville, and he, plays around there occasionally. He's not super big, but he does pretty well. Anyway. Yeah. So then, I was playing guitar, and then I picked up other instruments, and then I got into recording music not too long after I started playing guitar. And that was really my super interest. I got so into recording music that it became much less about my own music and more about other people's music. And then I started doing that for work, and I did media production, and I worked in small and medium budget films and TV, radio, and I hosted radio. I did news and radio. I've done so many jobs. It's kind of insane. I feel like I feel like I tell people, I'm not a compulsive liar. I swear. I'm like, I can show you my resume. Like, you could call these people, but it's like, I've had a lot of, but a lot of them are related too. A lot of them were in audio. I started off at the radio station doing, I interned there pretty young when I was going to one school. Yeah. I've gone to several different schools.
Okay.
But anyway, so I did the recording studio stuff for I did the recording studio. I mean, I did it professionally full time for really 7 years, maybe. And then I was like, okay, because I'm actually, I don't know, I sound probably, I don't care how I sound. I'm not going to talk about how I sound because I'm going to get like angry in my voice, but that's fine. Anyway, not important. I forget where I was going. I apologize. Now I've lost track. But anyway, please talk.
We were talking about, and you're right that there are a lot of, it can web out, that sort of skill set can web out in really interesting ways. Because I worked in radio for a little bit too, and a lot of that was totally tied in with my, I guess, sort of multimedia interests, but also my journalism background, which was, I think, benefited by that skill set. And that's what led to, I guess, getting into podcasting. And you can apply it so many different ways. Yeah. And it's really cool to, I think it's something that if there are younger Touretters listening who you might have some kind of proclivity with, creative, sort of technical but creative pursuits.
Mm-hmm. Technical but creative, exactly. That's it.
Yeah, it's like podcasting and audio is a really kind of, the cost of entry is not necessarily terribly high, and it can be a really...
Especially these days.
Yeah, these days, I mean, there's so many options. It can be a really fun kind of rabbit hole to go down, even if you do end up spending a little bit on gear that interests you. It's kind of fun and kind of therapeutic, and I feel like learning that stuff was very good for me, and that's where I could really laser focus and be proud of, I guess, what I was creating.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, if you're willing to like spend a bit on a guitar and learn it, then you'll definitely, you may be this sort of person who wants to also spend a bit on a good mixer or audio interface to go into your computer and start recording the guitar.
So maybe let's do some kind of before and after contrast type stuff with sort of your life with Tourette Syndrome, and if it applies, maybe kind of where it goes when you are doing these sort of creative things, these sort of technical but creative things. Because with me, I kind of, as I was saying, I can kind of laser focus, and if I'm ticking, it doesn't bother me. It's just I'm kind of there with the project, and I can really get obsessive with it and spend way too long on things sometimes. But it's a blast to do, and I always feel good at the end of it. So I don't know, where are you kind of with all that?
Definitely. I get really into it as well. One thing is my Tourette's kind of came and went. I've had a weird history with Tourette Syndrome. I first had it, oh boy, excuse me, hold on. Oh boy, okay, hello. When I first had it, I'm triggering you, I'm sorry. Slow down. I was like 7 or 8 when I first had it. And And I remember I got the blink to start, and I was just blinking really heavy. And then I think I might have been sniffling a bit. And I kind of remember around that time. Now, thinking back, I remember about around that time that I had coughs as well, like a lot of coughing, just because I felt excited or strange or whatever. You'd cough.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of weird. But the blinking one was definitely very pronounced because, and I remember specifically when I was having it, and it really got bad this one day or something. And my father came home from work and he was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, it's a habit. And I just said it so matter-of-factly. I was like, it's a habit. Cause I was just really like, don't even ask. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, probably afraid I'd get in trouble for it or something. But so that was, kind of the first one I had. And then, but then it progressed to sniffling a bunch and sniffling. And then as I grew up, I was, got a not when I grew up, as I grew up, but like in high school, early high school or mid high school, I got the nickname of Tweak because I was very twitchy and I liked coffee and I liked to be kind of weird. Yeah. So Tweak was my nickname and people called me Tweak forever. So okay, real quick backstory: I'm also a transgender woman, so I was a boy. Tweak isn't a boy name, but it seems more boyish because they call me that when I was a boy, but that's another thing entirely, whatever. My brain's a bit elsewhere right now. But so that was one other thing. But so where was I going with that nonsense?
So so we were kind of working around you said you had kind of an unusual history with it. It was kind of there and not, or...
Thank you. Yes. Absolutely. So I kind of had it for that period. And then I always had sniffling. And I remember when I was like 10 or 11 or 12, even like all my life, even up until recently-ish, people would be, not super recently, but up until when I was pretty old, honestly. And weirdly, when I was young, people would be like, do you do cocaine or something? They would ask me if I did drugs or something. I think it was kids usually who asked it, like as if they were cool, like talking about drugs or something. But I remember being like, what? I remember being afraid. I was like, people are going to continually ask me if I do drugs for my whole life. And it made me really extra afraid of drugs. But I think, so that was one thing about the sniffle. But that one lasted for a while. But I remember as I grew up, I did a bunch of things. So I have autism too. I have autism. I'm autistic. I don't know. Some people prefer one way of saying that and the other. I kind of use them interchangeably a bit.
Yeah, but, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, fuck. Okay, hello. Shh. 1 second. Okay, hello. Shh. And I lost the plot. I'm sorry. What were we talking about?
So, where you see sniffling and kind of expressions like that.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So so those continue. But then I remember when I was when I was pretty young. Excuse me. When I was pretty young. I would see pictures and videos of myself occasionally, and behaving, I guess, like a little bit twitchy and weird and I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just really did not like that. I remember that upset me a lot and I hated the way I looked. And, well, not just because I was presenting male at the time, but also because I just hated everything about it. I just thought of myself as the R word at the time, which is, unfortunate, but it was the way the way that society kind of, there was the joke or whatever about that sort of stuff. That was kind of, so I was like, I don't want to be that way. So I feel like I got better at that, at kind of hiding a lot of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the eyes and the sniffling and the twitching and all the hand movements and stuff, I kind of stopped doing a bit. Okay. And then oh shit. Okay, hello. The twitching in my eyes. I lost the plot again. I'm really sorry. Well, I'm having trouble. I worked today, so unfortunately, I have a lot of comorbidities. Tourette's is one of the comorbidities, autism that I believe, and also comorbidities are. I have a lot of sensory processing issues. I have executive function issues, and actually, there's studies that show transgender people are like, or I forget what the correlation is. It's either. But it's like a 7 times correlation between transgender and autism of the normal population or something like that. Yeah. Well, or not transgender, but gender nonconforming. I don't want to get it wrong, but something like that. And honestly, I've seen a few things, but there doesn't seem to be too much about it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, but and forgive me if this is a really dumb question, but in terms of, pressure that you may feel. So, for example, when you're presenting male and you didn't, kind of thinking back to the image of that and not really connecting with it and feeling comfortable with it.
Well,
this is kind of coming out weirdly, but just the headspace and then the kind of change and kind of feeling more content and those things will have positive impacts on me in terms of my TS and my tics and what bothers me. And
everything got better for 3 years. So I came out at the age of 33.
Yeah.
I'm 37 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I came out that time ago, and then I remember at the time, being like, I was having like throughout my life, I've had these kind of nervous breakdown periods, and where I've done really well, either academically or in some sort of industry, and then I would have a period where I'd have a breakdown period, and I'd kind of have to build myself back up, and I kept kind of doing that sort of thing, and that's why I feel like I've had maybe so many jobs as well, is because I've had I keep kind of like, I did the studio for so long, and then I started realizing there wasn't enough structure there, and so I started having breakdowns from that. And also, it's just hard working for yourself. There's a lot of things that are required to work for yourself that are very difficult for certain people, especially people with executive function issues and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was easy to, because I could also present the way I wished to some degree for a long time. I really had lots of jobs where, like, when I was younger, and I was like, blah, blah, blah. And I would just kind of wear like a barrette or nail polish, and we got to do the feminine things I wanted to do. But as I got older, I had to, I was doing the studio, which was really cool because I could also wear nail polish and clothes that I enjoyed, and a little bit of makeup and things like that. Nobody really minded too much. I was just the eccentric, like, audio engineer, right? And so I did that for a while. And then my brain started to break down from that type of work. And I was like, well, I need to do something structured. And I'm like, school is very structured. I went back to school, and I went to school for mechanical engineering technology, and I ended up, there was 60 people in the program when we started, and when we finished there was 11, and I was the number one. I was very proud of that. So I was like, see, I'm not stupid. But that's awesome. Then out of school, thanks. So then out of school, I went and did a job for a company that was actually pretty cool. I got to, like, really be, like, hands-on and making decisions on, things that affected the way that Boston looks, like the facades. We did architectural panels, architectural products, windows, a lot of the glass, the aluminum, everything like that you see in and outside of buildings. So I did that for, I did that for 3 years. And it was really challenging and really fun, and, like, it was going so well, and I was really happy. And they put me in charge of the panel department entirely, and they bought, like, this huge fancy machine to route out panels and all this cool stuff. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And I was doing so well.
Wow.
Oh boy! And then I got a really good review on okay, hello. And I got a really good review on year 3. Okay. And around year 3, and so everything was going well. But then I had started. So then they built the engineering department. I'm sorry that I got to slow down. They built the engineering department offices, rebuilt them, and it was nice. They built the offices nice, but they put it, like, in the workshop area where there's a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
And so all the noise of the workshop machines, like, even, like, there was a huge, like, 16-foot, like, brake press metal shear, like, 10 feet away from my desk on the other side of a not well isolated wall.
Yeah.
And all these noises over time. And I think also because all of a sudden my desk was facing a wall, and there was people who could come up behind me. So I have, like, a bunch of things, like, sensory processing stuff with hearing, and also sense, like, light, touching, all that sort of stuff can really add up, sound especially too.
Yeah.
So throughout the day, just having, like, people surprise me from behind, also the noise and from the shop. So I started having kind of, like, breakdowns and stuff, and I was really I was like, whoa, this is how the human brain works. I was literally understanding how it works as I was watching it fall apart piece by piece. It was really quite impressive, but terrifying. And I was like, well, this is interesting. So then I was like, well, I got to go to the doctor. And so I did, and they were like, well, we think you probably have autism. And I was like, well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, my parents were very poor and rather, I don't want to get into it, but abusive and neglectful and blah, blah, blah. But they, so we didn't really see doctors, things like that, unless the school required it for the most part. And when I was a kid, my nana, or somehow I ended up going to Boy Scouts for a few months because I was a boy at the time, as I mentioned. they told my parents, oh, we think they have ADHD. And then when I was in fourth grade, my teacher was like, yeah, I think they have autism, or fifth grade. And I remember these things, and I remember just, again, the R word came up in my mind. And so I was like, no, that's not me.
Right.
So anyway, so I got, so then I did the test. I went to, the Boston, Beth Israel in Boston, and did a whole bunch of weird tests. And the one thing that was good out of it was they told me my IQ was as high as I hoped it was, but they also told me I definitely did have autism as well, which made sense because I have face blindness. I have a whole bunch of random things. And so it's just, you can really learn to mask. And I think what I did is I learned to mask, not just my tics, but, my gender. I had to mask and my autism as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't mask the gender thing too well. I was kind of just would wear whatever, and then I get in trouble for it, but whatever. So it was frowned upon in my household, unfortunately. So it's a whole bunch of stories I could go in forever. But anyway, choose your road.
I mean, it seems like a lot of that stuff intersects with not having good parental support in general, no matter who you are, is not a great thing. And then being sort of maybe having greater societal acceptance issues, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff kind of colliding at once, and then sort of like just internal stuff you were feeling when you were young. I mean, how did that? So when you first kind of like tics and not even tics, just anything that kind of felt like, okay, this is not what everything around me kind of feels like, or not the people around me, and it's just a feeling I had that I totally remember being in I guess this was preschool. It was before kindergarten, being on this playground at this in this church playground, and totally not being on the wavelength of anybody around me, and totally being conscious of that. And that's a really weird thing, because I remember after that, I think I just showed some vulnerability, and I remember kind of being where I was kind of left alone before that. I remember being kind of bullied after that, arms twisted, that sort of thing. And it's like, it's like, it's almost like it presents in you when you have that sort of realization of like, oh my God, I'm different. And you have that in a fearful way. That's what really got me.
Oh boy. Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, no, I was definitely bullied before I started trying to present at all female, and then I got seriously bullied when I started wearing things like makeup and skirts, things like that. Mm-hmm. Nail polish, yeah, absolutely. And then my father was not any better, right? He was very against that sort of thing, and like there's a horrible story when I was in some grade anyway. Like the school year was over, and I was very happy because I was like, oh yeah, I made it through the whole school year. My parents didn't realize to what degree I was wearing nail polish and all these like things that I was wearing, because they disagreed, and my homeschool teacher disagreed too, and she would call occasionally and they'd get mad at me, but it was never a big deal. Mm. But then I was wearing them, okay. So then I was, but I would just kind of do things. And at the time too, this was back whatever age I am. So that was kind of like, at the time, like, it was kind of more acceptable to be goth. So I started off with a slight sort of gothish sort of thing, so you could get away with that as a male, being like, yeah, this works. But, either way, but then I quickly was like, oh wait, blue nail polish is better than black, give me that, or whatever, sparkly blue, even better. Yeah, like immediately, right? But where was I? So my parents did not like that, and so that night when I thought the school was out, my parents went grocery shopping, and they ran into my homeschool teacher. This is 6th grade, yeah, and then she told them about the whole thing or whatever, and then they came home and they were like so angry, and I was like really upset. And then my father shaved my head, which I had long hair at the time, and he like took all of my clothes, including clothes I bought, like my Nirvana shirts and stuff like that. God. Threw those all away. Took all my artwork off the walls, which so much of it I made. I just need to go to therapy for this shit and not be talking about it on this show. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just to be that suppressed away from you have an expression of your identity and where you feel good. And for real, no.
And then somebody's just like, it's bad. Well, unfortunately, my older siblings, kind of like my oldest brother has schizophrenia. My mother, I believe, to have something similar to schizophrenia, and she's been institutionalized a few times and has these these long episodes or whatever where she kind of loses it. Mental health issues are just rampant in my family, and I freaking got every one of them, and it's really difficult, and I'm doing my best. Yeah. But, anyway, I'm sorry.
So has the attitude to mental health been sort of just kind of survivalist, I'm going to get through it, or has it been, So just not a positive outlook on mental health?
In my family, no. My brother, who has schizophrenia, my parents will be like, "Come, you're fine. Come live with us. We'll help you." They make him stop taking his medicine. They're like, "Here, drink alcohol instead. That'll help you." And then he ends up having a horrible breakdown, going back to prison, going back to the hospital, rinse and repeat. And I'm like, Jesus Christmas, you guys, like, stop it. Like, let him take his medicine. Let him be helped by the government. He needs these things. Like, and they just keep taking him away from it. But they are very much against mental health stuff. But I do remember when my mom was young, she had this little worry stone, and I wanted to mention this because I thought it was like my first memory of being told about anxiety, depression, that sort of stuff. My mom was huge with anxiety and depression, as am I. And so she gave me this worry stone, and she said, "Here, if you need because I was like, I don't remember what age, back when they were trying to scare kids about AIDS, which was scary, of course. I was convinced I had AIDS. Yeah. So I was like freaking horrified. I was convinced I had AIDS, and my mom's like, "Oh," so she was nice, and she gave me this worry stone to rub to help me feel better about it. Oh. And but yeah, I'm sorry. So
So there are kind of two ways, I guess. Well, there are a lot of ways to look at TS, but two of the ways to look at TS is one is, the tics are kind of, that's what Tourette Syndrome is. It's the tics and the motor and vocal. And then there's the other kind of angle of like, the tics may not be, the core of it or the thing to treat. The tics may be a sign of other things. And that's where you get that Tourette iceberg thing. And
iceberg, yes, I was going to mention that. Absolutely. No, I've been sharing that all around. I'm a total, I feel like I'm pretty well knowledgeable. That's the way to say that, right? It became a special interest. So lately my special interests have become kind of more about autism, about Tourette's, things like that.
I mean, could I guess right that the comorbidities and things that you go through and kind of reducing them to call them comorbidities, it's almost like these are the things that come in addition to TS, and it's a term I use, but they can be pretty dominant things where the tics themselves might be kind of like a so what kind of thing. I mean, is that kind of where it is with you, where like you have tics and you could, there's coprolalia and you could maybe do without it, but is the more serious stuff, the depression, anxiety, and all of that?
It has always been. I'm formally overdiagnosed with anxiety. I've been to the hospital. I've been to the ER for like those 2 years where I was like, could not convince myself I didn't have cancer of one form or another. It was horrible. It was like a nightmare. Yeah. So super, super bad hypochondria, they call it. Oh, nightmarish. But anyway, so, and my life has been kind of just a lot of anxiety, but like generally positive and generally good, but, and happy, except for like, a bunch of, poverty, abuse, and random things like that. So kind of, I feel like I was able to, and I guess I have like, I'm diagnosed with CPTSD, but also I have a dissociation kind of component where like in order to kind of deal with the way I was raised and all that sort of stuff, you dissociate in certain ways. Yeah. And so that's something that I can, or that I not can do, but I do, and it helps me sometimes, but it hinders me in other ways. So I have like, so it's really hard. One thing I want to say is that like all these comorbidities seem to like meld into each other in really interesting ways. Some of them just are like more, kind of like this more than the sum of their parts. Like for instance, if I tic at work, all of a sudden I might be ticking. I might tick like in a low register where like at work I have to have my girl voice because nobody knows, and that's good. So I could get into like, oh my gosh, why am I in this closet now all of a sudden when I got out of that other closet sort of situation, right? Yeah. So it's like a whole bunch of nonsense there. But anyway, so there's a whole thing about passing culture, and I don't like passing culture, but for me, it really is a matter of just reducing gender dysphoria and reducing harm and removing fear. But at the same time, it's like, oh, do these people even, if this person knew that I was trans, if they found out somehow like today, would they just like hate me all of a sudden? It's like, It's a weird duality that you live between too, I guess. So it's kind of sad because some people have such strong feelings about it. So what I do is I try really hard to explain and with a loving nature get people to understand what it is and blah blah, what it isn't, and kind of I side with people. And there's some like kind of more right wing views that aren't entirely wrong. So I mean, like you have to meet in the middle a little bit sometimes on some topics, but there's a lot of junk about it too. There's so much misinformation about that topic, so much misinformation about Tourette, so much misinformation about autism, about everything, about anxiety and depression.
Totally. And it's about just, I mean, having these conversations are extremely important to me and hopefully important to the people listening. I mean, I think the effect is that kind of having these long form conversations and kind of hearing people and present their stories in context, with the world. And it's not just a quick 3-minute thing. Like, I'm going to give you a primer on what my life is like. Here's me in 3 minutes. I mean, I can't get to know you that way. And I can't get to know or develop any real appreciation for the challenges that you go through. And I mean, unless I really hear you kind of flesh them out. And that's kind of where it is for me, the listening thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like there's so much information. Somebody on this podcast was talking about that too, actually. I've been listening to your podcast a lot, but,
thank you.
One of, it's been helping me actually. I'm trying to pick a lane to go down here. And one is, my Tourette's. So yeah, it got better. And then it was just sniffling, and I guess I sniffled more than I realized I did, but whatever. People just thought I had allergies. It wasn't a big deal for a long time. But really the way it came out the most was when I was under extreme emotion or feeling. And it was one of the weird things is like, okay, so the TMI is only girlfriends knew basically that I had Tourette's for a while because it would come out during times of emotion, right?
Yeah.
And like very specific emotion, right? So but I would do this crazy thing where I would like speak in tongues almost, and to them they were probably like, "Ooh, that's cute." Or so kind of comorbidities meld together for me a lot. Where I have these. I don't know. I think I have. I'm not even technically diagnosed with Tourette. I just know that I have it based on the fact that I had it when I was a kid. I still have it. It gets worse here and there. It's been really bad for a while. And I think, honestly, even though it was worth it, I think that transitioning hormone changes as they affect it when you are a teenager, I think affect it if you happen to be transgender and you switch hormones, which I've done. So I feel like
have
that
you heard
I have
that
had
from have you connected with other trans Touretters or?
That's smart. I should. I actually know one other transgender Tourette friend that I didn't know had Tourette's. I didn't really know much about Tourette's, even because like I've heard people on your show talk about it. It's like you don't call it Tourette's. Same as transgender. I didn't call myself transsexual or transgender or any of these things because that was an insult. That was a horrible thing,
Yeah.
And so you don't call yourself these things. You just say, "Oh, I'm this." To me, I was like, "Oh, I'm just like a girl." Basically that looks a little bit more like a boy, but like not that thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like and it's unfortunate. I think it really is. I can't think of any other answer other than we unfortunately make fun of probably the wrong people in society, which gets into the whole comedy thing, which I could spend an hour talking about. So again, I don't know. Oh, but anyway, so the comorbidities, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say the comorbidities real quick. I get also kind of these seizure-typey things. And some people on your show talk about having tick fits that are very seizure-like.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking, wait, maybe this isn't that. I mean, they were like, well, you have CPTSD. It would make sense that you have these psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. And so that's kind of what they've been, even though I've never actually I never went back to do the scan or whatever. I was actually afraid to do any of that stuff. I have hypochondria, and also I don't want them to be like, "Oh, I'm going to take your license away if it comes out wrong," whatever. I'd rather not know at this point. I can drive fine. F you, don't worry about it. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. But so psychogenic non-epileptic seizures maybe, or Tourette, either way. But I get really bad seizures at times, like super crazy, where I kind of don't black out, but I kind of, brown out, as they would say on Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Or get like kind of dim in my faculties.
Yeah.
And I've had them, and those were the things that used to come a lot with the pun that I just used. But along with the speaking in tongues. But so it wasn't, but it's not really, it hasn't been really an issue in my life, I feel like, until like it wouldn't really happen. But then it started happening more and more. And I was in a meeting at work and I had a small one sitting there and just kind of started like vibrating fully almost, my whole body in a weird way. And normally it happens when I'm falling asleep. Maybe I was falling asleep in the meeting, I'm not sure, but I was just getting really tired, I guess. But I started having it and people kind of freaked out, and I remember just trying to get up and leave, and I really couldn't. So it's hard to tell whether, they all kind of blend into each other. I have OCD really bad, and those things kind of blend into Tourette's in a lot of ways. So, but then just a few months ago now, I had a really bad seizure at work, and I fell, like, kind of slid out of my chair and onto the floor. I kind of knew I was guiding myself to the floor, or at least I thought I was, and I never really get hurt from them, so I feel like I have some semblance of control. Yeah. But they're pretty much overwhelming, and it's hard to explain. And I get them sometimes more than others. So that was a bad one. And I went into tick fits, and I was just ticking and ticking and ticking this. And I've had just a real uptick of ticks lately, especially in the past, around the time, so I've been working at this job for almost 2 years. I was at the other place for 3 years. At the other place, I was ticking pretty badly a lot at times, but then it went away. So it's come and gone in different ways, but a lot of it was just more moving my arms, quick little jolts and stuff like that. These days, I have trouble walking, give the middle fingers very, very frequently. I have coprolalia, all that sort of stuff. I have a whole bunch of words I'll go through and say. But yeah, right now this has been nice. I'm on the phone technically, even though I feel like I'm on the phone. I'm talking into a microphone, but whatever. But anyway, sorry, so I can blab on too. Yeah, I've had a couple glasses of wine. I think that helps. Oh boy.
How do you do with, have you messed with any medications or anything like that? Does that stuff agree with you, or? Yeah,
mostly everything I've tried was just for anxiety, and the depression has never really been too bad up until maybe a couple of years ago too. So everything's just been treating anxiety, and I thought I had anxiety. I even thought like maybe my sensory processing issues were anxiety, maybe like the autism things were anxiety. But if that's what everybody tells you, they're like, oh, you have anxiety. And I do. I have severe, incredible anxiety. Yeah. But I also have a whole bunch of other things that when I take care of those other things, such as the sensory processing issues, if I remember to kind of keep myself on my sensory diet, make sure like not too much light enters my eyes. Literally I don't have to count each photon throughout the day, kind of. Not really, but it can be kind of bad, just like the amount of sensory input and like sound, things like that. And it's just a matter of, if I get too much, I have to go into a dark room that is silent or with rain noise usually, and just lay there and not do anything for hours or up to a day. Yeah. And if it gets really bad, I just can't work. And I've been in that state lately. So that's one reason I was nervous about this podcast. I was like, I've been so bad, I've been ticking like nuts, but I'm probably drinking or just being in a weird state of explaining things that I'm interested in. I'm in kind of a free form kind of voice, I guess. Sorry. Anyway.
Well, do the people? Well, actually, I was going to ask about sort of the work environment and everything, and who knows what about you in terms of TS and other diagnoses or diagnosable things. Yeah. But what you just said kind of makes me wonder too about, and I've been thinking about this a little bit more lately. The kind of maybe order of operations or order of the dominoes when it comes to what sets off what, and if there's something kind of at the outset that I need to better identify, whether it's like maybe just sleeping better solves XYZ for me. Maybe it's not a cure, but it may help, with this first thing that may help relieve pressure on this other thing that I have. And it's an experiment. It's all hypothetical. I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I'm trying to kind of figure myself out in that way. And I guess I just never really paid it too much mind before I just have all these things at once, and I can't, they relate to one another in quirky ways, but I never really thought about treating one to help the other, which sounds so basic, and I feel like I should have been thinking that all along, but it's something to kind of think about, like where it starts for you.
It's hard to think about, Absolutely, it is. No, for sure. Definitely like diet, exercise, those sorts of things seems to help a lot. And like I've heard about people talk about caffeine. Like it's the thing too, is I have like this, it's really hard to explain, but like I have to have some level of stimulus, but it can't be too much. So it's kind of like always playing a game of that game Operation, where you're like in between boundaries at all times. You have to keep everything in between boundaries, and I feel like that's kind of how it's been for me. And as I've gotten older, and in some ways a lot of things have gotten a bit harder, and I've gotten maybe tireder, and I've had a lot of things that people would consider successes And I guess where success is, but like you just get these things and you can kind of project, like, I mean, I'm not rich and famous, but I'm like, well, at this point, like, I've gotten almost everything I've ever wanted, and like I'm still not happy. So there's something I'm missing here. But so I think a lot of it is also maybe just therapy can help. But in terms of kind of figuring out what sort of things you can do on your own, diet, exercise are probably some of the big ones. Especially that I do well with diet. I try to get exercise. It's difficult, but otherwise keeping it depends on each person. But if you have sensory processing issues, it really is a matter of just. I keep headphones in at all times. I keep, earplug headphones, earbuds. And usually they're just off. Usually they're not even plugged in. I'll just be holding on to them or put them down by my side when I'm at my desk.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's a really good one. Keeping sound levels down. I need to get some sound canceling headphones. That's going to help me even better. And then also I need to make a little light. I've already devised it in my mind, but I need to like make a little button where it turns on a little LED in front of next to my computer. So when I'm in my cubicle and people want to get my attention, they don't have to startle me, because I have really bad startle reflex about everything.
Yeah.
And people, it's sad. People at work are always like, "Oh, I'm sorry I startled you," and it's gotten to the point where it's not even like a thing. It's just insane. But like I try not to be too startled, but like and sometimes I'm like, no, it's not you, don't worry about it, because like literally like I could just turn around and see them, and like the light bouncing off of their body is too loud for me or something. It's just you know what I mean? It's just all of a sudden just sensory input, boom,
Yeah.
And so there's no way around it, and I can tell when that's coming, but that means I'm way too far past the point of health, and I'm no longer able to feel joy. I'm like in a state of anhedonia, is that what it's called, where you can't really enjoy things. So I need to like find a way to have a job and occupations that keep me busy, and also the money is always an issue, right? So I need to also make enough money to doing something that keeps me busy, keeps me at a certain level of interest and challenge. And it's just these days. So so anyway, I was talking about that old job, the one where I was working on architectural projects in Boston area. And so I was there, and after 3 years, I got a fine review and everything, but I started having problems, and I asked if I could have the reasonable accommodations of earplugs and sunglasses while working, because I was just like, I need to keep these sensory inputs out of my body as much as possible, because I was just burning out and I couldn't even work. I would fall asleep at my desk because I was just so burnt out and tired.
Yeah.
And it was really bad. I was losing my mind. It was really crazy. Yeah. And, but yeah, it was like hard as heck. And one time so I was laying there, and I guess it was the end of the day. I couldn't remember. Time would just pass weirdly. I remember I was just like, if you can just be at work, you're doing your best. That's the best you can do, is just be here. And I would just pass out, try to wake up, pass out, try to wake up. And then near the end of the day, my boss, I was probably so frazzled with my nerves, and my boss came over and tapped on my shoulder, and I like freaked out, and I wasn't angry or anything. I was just like, I think I just started ticking, and I was like, what? No, I think I started saying no at first. I was like, no. But anyway, so whatever. So so I had a few weird episodes at work, and
the sensitivities and environments that may be kind of difficult to be in. The sensitivities that you're describing, this is a potentially ignorant question, but are they also what kind of, I guess, give you that edge when it comes to sort of your creative sensitivities and audio mixing and your photography and things like that? Where
it's hard to say.
I guess really it would be hard to say, because it's only you can't see outside of your own context, or nobody else really can.
Yeah.
But I
remember feeling too strict. I will say this: I do have OCD, but I remember feeling too strict about audio. I was like, you're trying, because I have a lot of OCD issues where like I'll constantly be touching one part of my body when I'm nervous.
Yeah.
And I used to have it more when I was a kid, but I'll constantly be touching some part of my body to balance out the way I feel on the other half of my body. That part.
Totally.
So my knuckles, my wrist, my whatever, I'm just constantly trying to balance bilateral symmetry sensation across my body, and that's one that really kind of gets to the point where I get annoyed with it. And then I also do a lot of so there's that, and then there's stimming that I know I do a lot of rocking, shaking, flapping, all that sort of stuff. I don't even care. It's like, if people see it, and at this point I'm going to have a nervous breakdown, or you're going to see me tick or stim. And then there's also ticking, right? So like, it's hard to tell which is which sometimes, and they kind of co-align. One thing I did want to mention too was people who get thoughts stuck in their head, or not just thoughts, that's an OCD thing for sure, but like phrases, like they might just say a random phrase over and over, even though they feel a compulsion, but it's not entirely compulsory is the word. Mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? Like they get a thought in their head and they kind of will like, and I get that. I get this a lot. And I was talking to some people, another person, a friend of mine that has Tourette's too. I just found out because we were talking about this actually. And then he was like, oh yeah, I'll do this at work. And I was given the finger and get in trouble by accident for giving the finger. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. I was like, you have Tourette. I'm like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, you didn't know this? Like, I'm like, that's crazy. I was very happy. I was like, oh my goodness, hey, look at, like, we have this in common. That's so cool. And like, we can talk about it. But he said he's lucky he doesn't have it too bad these days. He says it's kind of mostly gone away, but mine's gone really badly at times. But it does often come in fits, and I get periods of nice placidity. Is that the word?
Sounds right. I know what you mean.
Calmness. Yeah. But anyway, I forget where I was going with any of that. I feel like I've tied up several loose ends. I apologize for my fragmented way of talking.
I kind of like the way we've been going at it. Just kind of hitting the thoughts that...
It's the way they do TV. Yeah, they show like one part of an episode, another, and like, meanwhile, back in the lab. Back at the hospital.
This has been kind of a fun way to go about it because we've hit a lot of stuff that I feel like even if we haven't been, completely linear, it's been something everybody I think can relate to and follow. So to one degree or another, and I was thinking. So I was thinking about the drummer I interviewed this season, Mike Miller, who he has superhuman hearing, and it's hard for him to say because he only knows himself, but he can hear frequencies that most people can't. And I just kind of wonder, and it may be just my ignorance or lack of education. I mean, I have sensory things. I don't like listening to music that's too loud. I hate the way that stereos and like Netflix are set up now with the 5.1 or whatever it is, to where you're listening to the dialogue, then all of a sudden the music, the score is like super loud and overpowering. And you have to grab that remote, unless you have some sort of like compressor rigged up in your living room or something. You have to grab the remote and turn the volume down quickly because it can be kind of overwhelming. And that's the stuff that, like, I love music, I love audio, but I really like listening to it at limited volumes versus the sort of like, I love music, turn it up type thing.
I'm that type. I like to consider myself a sensory hypocrite. It's really bad.
That's interesting though, that there are things that, I don't know what the standard is, if it's like aesthetically pleasing frequencies or like, I'm trying to learn more about that.
Yeah, no, for me, if it's music I like, I can often listen to it loudly. But if sometimes, but also like if sometimes there's a loud sound, it'll startle me so much, or I'll just start ticking like crazy, or or it'll just cause me to block my ears and just kind of go into almost like a shutdown mode where I can't handle the noise because it's just too much. Noises, oh my gosh. So yeah, noises are sometimes like, I don't think people understand this. Actually, oh my gosh, okay, Misophonia. I have that too.
Yeah, my wife has that.
You mentioned it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You mentioned it on an episode, and you mentioned a podcast, and I paused your episode right then, and I went and listened to that podcast, and I was like, oh yeah. But then I went back and finished your episode, of course. But then I was listening to an episode of
the Misophonia podcast though. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I went back and listened to so anyway, so I have all sorts of weird misophonia issues. They're not usually too awful, but sometimes they're really bad. But like somebody on one of those podcasts, or somebody mentioned like it was just, it creates this panic rage inducing thing. And the way I've likened it is if somebody comes up and just gives you a wet willy in your ear. Like, what if a stranger gave you a wet willy? You know what that is? They lick their finger, put it in your ear.
Yeah.
Grossest thing possible.
You have this reaction where you're like, oh my God.
It's the audible version of that, and you want to punch them in the face.
Yeah.
And it's just really upsetting. But so I was listening to Comedy Bang Bang, which I know you've listened to as well.
Oh yeah.
And
love Scott Aukerman. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was going to punch Scott in the face because he started making this chewing mouth noise, and it is the worst thing you can imagine. And I like threw my phone across the car and I was screaming at it because I was just had the speaker playing the podcast on the way to work. And I was just like, no. I was so upset. I was like, this is so much like misophonia. That's funny. But anyway.
Mouth sounds. Yeah.
But there was a woman.
I always try to avoid that if I can help it.
Mouth sounds are difficult.
Yeah, it's bad.
And I feel like I do them sometimes, yeah. But like, so yeah, like a sensory hypocrite where like I'll sometimes just shout at work when it's quiet, or sometimes I'll tick and I'll throw my mouse across the desk. And so I'm like, So I'm like,
Yeah.
sorry. But anyway, so it's, that's like kind of hypocritical, but not on purpose. It's because it's like, please be quiet. And also F this and whatever, AF and throw mouse and all this stuff. But every person kind of has their own neurology and the way their brain works. And it's a matter of kind of nurturing them, understanding them. Everybody's going to communicate in the way that they do. You can't dictate the way in which somebody communicates. All you can do is try to listen. And that's it. You can't just be like, oh, you're not saying things in my language. Well, that's too bad. Then you're not going to hear it. I'm sorry. Languages don't care. So it's just a matter of kind of being more accepting just on a grand scale. Because not only if you have neurodivergence A, B, C, or D, do you have an excuse to be the way you are. Every single human has an excuse to be the way they are. They are all just doing their best with what they have, and that's it. That's all any of us can ever do.
Right.
And that's my little thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's, it's like you don't need to volunteer for challenges on top of the challenges that just kind of naturally come with figuring out who you are and what you want to do.
Just being human. The human condition is nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way to... And it really comes down to comparing, and it's difficult. And I guess this is kind of like the extreme ends. I really am against comparing, even though I feel like I've gotten a pretty bad hand when it comes to mental health and neurological issues, this, that, and the other thing. And also just even... So that's nature and also nurture.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like I've been kind of... I don't know if it's gifted. Sometimes I've said having high IQ is a bad thing, but having high-ish IQ can be good too. And I feel like it's helped me get through a lot of things. And I don't know, I feel like there's maybe some spiritual aspect to this whole thing, or I don't know what, but it's just a matter of kind of like, giving it a shot and doing your best. And I've seen some weird things come out of it. So I don't know, it's worth a shot.
Well, I like what you said about everybody has an excuse to be the way they are. And I mean, it's a legitimate thing, because I don't know what, completely...
I don't believe in free will, honestly.
Well,
I don't think free will is a real thing. I don't believe consciousness is what we think it is. I don't believe any of this is what we think it is, but that's okay. That's neither here nor there.
Well, yeah. Well, the free will thing's interesting too, just about, I guess there's the sort of Sam Harris definition of, like we're so completely influenced by our past, and then structural systematic things around us, and then genetic things within us. And, like how much choice do we really kind of have ultimately?
Which part of this did you choose? Yeah. Did you choose that you wanted to be hungry? Well, no. Well, did you choose that you like vanilla or chocolate? Well, then choose chocolate instead if you liked vanilla, or vice versa. Go ahead and choose. If you can't choose, you can't choose. And I guess, again, choice comes down to gender, sexuality too. I'm, technically a lesbian, because I don't know if technically, whatever. And it's about definition too. I'm always like, if somebody wants to define, define me as a man, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're a man in a dress or whatever. It's like, well, I don't wear dresses too often, but I do like a nice dress. But if you want to define me as a man in a dress, that's fine. But that means you're defining man differently than I do. And that's fine. We can define them differently, but we have to, that we have to get that across. We have to say, you're defining man as a male. I'm defining man as the gender that males generally seem to choose. And that's definitely not me. It's never been me. I've never been able to really choose that. I have masculine aspects, as everyone does, but I'm definitely not a man. So it's kind of like, back to choice. But so it comes down to, well, what are you, what can you choose? And I've talked to people, and I've really tried to, there's so much misinformation in the world about all of these different things. And I think that, I don't know, if we just realize that everybody's doing the best they can with what they're given, I think that would be enough to fill in the information, and you don't need to know the details of, well, Tourette's is actually this, and some people swear and some people don't, blah, blah, blah. You could just kind of be like, well, everybody's doing the best. And here's the thing, guess what? If somebody's ticking and they don't have Tourette's, or if somebody's wearing female clothes in public and they don't have gender dysphoria, they have something else. There's some reason they're doing it, and even if not, what's the harm in it? It's like we just hate things that are different so much that we have to pretend there's something wrong with them, even when there's no real objectively wrong thing, or even subjectively wrong that I don't know, that's validated. Yeah,
it's like we need to get away from the idea that there's a normal person, or a normal stand. I don't know what a basic or what a normal person is, if it's the guy in the chewing gum commercial, and how did he get that way, and it's
he got so normal.
It's just maybe that's something worth studying, of what it sort of takes in life
is
to
normal.
Be completely just,
and I think
however you define it, I have no
idea. The best thing we could do is minimize harm. So if something's abnormal, you need to ask, well, is it harming anybody or anything? And if not, then you need to calm down.
Yeah. We'll be right back. The Tourette Association of America has been around since 1972, and today is the premier nonprofit in the U.S. working for all people affected by Tourette and tic disorders. One of the ways that happens is through communications and awareness tools, which is one of the reasons why the Tourette Association is the primary sponsor of this podcast. They help me out a lot, and you can find tons of information on their website, tourette.org, tourette.org. And I want to thank them for their support of Tourette's podcast. Well, I mean, where do we've gone so many good directions, and I feel like we've kind of built this theme, and it's been really, because, we've hit the creativity stuff and sort of the ups and downs of that, because there are pressures and sensitivities that seem to be the sort of sacrifice you put up when you are, and I'm not saying it's like there's a system of like rewards or anything like that. It's just sometimes these things kind of come out to us kind of viewing the world differently, and that means different art, that means different different chord progressions, that means and I see that as a rewarding thing versus just to make the worst analogy ever. This is the worst analogy ever. When I was shopping, I was looking for a new camera system to get into. So a camera system, for example, would be like Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm, and I ended up going with Olympus because nobody else was going with it. Because
the mirrorless, or
Olympus
mirrorless.
Yeah, a few years ago, I got into the Micro Four Thirds Olympus mirrorless cameras, and I love them.
Yeah,
and I love them.
They're pretty crazy. Yeah,
they're great. And
I'm gonna try them. Yeah,
and I love them because
they look cool.
The raw files look different, and they give me a different starting point. And I like the idea that I was doing something that had a texture and kind of a look to it that was different than what I would get if I was shooting with a Canon sensor. And that kind of thing. So I liked that idea that I had something different that would look different, that maybe people could comment on and say, this looks different, and like it for that.
A nice color to add, sure.
Yeah.
Not color really, but
something like
that. Of something. Yeah.
It was a conscious choice to pick something that wasn't ubiquitous and wasn't just, and I'm not saying you can't make, great.
Ansel Adams.
Yeah. It's,
yeah.
And
a little trademarky, nothing bad. Oh fuck, nothing wrong with that.
yeah. It's like you can make great art with any tool, but I wanted something that kind of just gave me the feel of I'm starting from a different place. Whether
nice,
whether I could do it with the same camera system or a different camera system or whatever, and it's like just there seems to be a reward kind of in that pursuit, and I think that's just the reward of just kind of really having a sort of a variety view on life and not being scared to talk about things that make you uncomfortable, and at least taking the time to learn facts that, I mean, if you got a problem with them, then, maybe you can do something to change what those facts mean for the world. But at least just taking the time to get to know people as humans.
Learning doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm very much against I'm very anti-censorship. That's one thing. I just, but I understand. I like there to be safe spaces, but I also like there to be unsafe spaces. Sometimes, because people need to be able to talk about any topic. And if it's a topic that is, if it's not a good topic, then it'll fall by the light of day, right? I don't know.
Well, suppression doesn't always do great things for what you're trying to suppress either when it comes to, and
it can backfire, right? So I don't know.
Suppression can sometimes motivate what you're trying to suppress to survive.
Exactly.
And that's really difficult, and that's it's, and this isn't exactly the same thing, but it's one of the reasons why I would never censor any coprolalia or anything like that on this podcast, because I feel like it just kind of throws the same blanket over, if it is an uncomfortable thing for people to get to know, it's. I don't want to kind of endorse the idea that it's uncomfortable. I want it to be more normal and heard kind of in a raw way. And on the other side, you can say, so that wasn't really bad. You got to learn something. You got to hear somebody talk about what it's like to live their life as the human that they are. And if you heard some coprolalia stuff along the way, that's just something that happened. We're all good. We're okay.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's been my philosophy toward it.
I know, absolutely. I didn't really think too much about like the aspects of like it until recently of coprolalia and such. And I honestly didn't think I had it. I knew that I said us a lot, which I thought was kind of me suppressing ass, because occasionally I would just be like ass, like say it like very clearly. I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of subconsciously turning it into something else. And I do that with my middle finger.
Right.
I have my pinky fingers up like half the time when I'm at work, because it's like a pacifier for my middle finger. Or I'll do the love symbol, which is put the middle fingers down, so that like it's the opposite sort of thing. I guess I don't know if that's CBIT or what, CBIT, but I've not really looked too much into that yet. But it's, it's kind of the way that I've done things so that I don't just give the finger all day, and it can be a tick, but not the same one, I guess. I forget where I was going with that. Again, my brain is just elsewhere. I had to work today. I did 6 hours instead of 8, which I was like, okay, that should be enough.
Yeah.
But at this, my brain is just like starting to turn into fizzle pop.
Well, sometimes I'm like that, and then sometimes I have just sort of this like boost where working through the day, my brain doesn't want to stop and it doesn't want to shut it down.
I miss those.
There's
those are when I have special interests. That's the difference.
See, there it is. Like that's exactly where I would go. That's what would keep me up. It's like, okay, I'm done with my work. I worked this long day of doing journalism
it's not
or
work,
whatever.
Then, I taught myself 3D modeling in CAD. I taught myself SolidWorks and all that, and now that's basically what I do for work. Even though my degree was in mechanical engineering, like it helped maybe, I guess. But my ability to do really good 3D models and photorealistic. I do all the artsy fartsy stuff. So I kind of do graphic design for the place I'm at too. It's pretty good. I like the place I'm at, and it's a good balance. It's not as challenging some ways, which is upsetting. And I actually unfortunately, they made me, it's been the slow season, so I had to not work almost at all. Everybody's just been sitting around. I don't know what people do when they don't have work. Drove me completely insane, quite literally. It's like a water pump running without water, and it burns up, and that's what I did. And so I'm in a really kind of rough state, and I think that's one reason my Tourette's has been a bit worse too. It's been picking up in the past like a couple of weeks where like sometimes it's almost all day and it gets really tiring. And the middle finger is, I had to stop. I had to just try to relax my middle fingers and almost force not to happen because they were squeezing so tight that and then I would shake it loose to get rid of the middle finger. You make the middle finger and you squeeze it really tight, and that hurts your hand, and then you're upset that you did that, so you shake your hand violently to shake the middle finger out of it, and then your hand hurts from that, and it's just over the day you're beating the heck out of your hands. I'm gonna have such bad knuckles when I'm 90.
God. So we got to think of like a new thing that you can burn through. I mean, have you ever gone like kind of revisited old work, like like go back to like old raw files of photos and try to edit them a different way? Or that's one
smart,
thing I've been doing lately with
that's cool.
Some of my old photos.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in such trouble. And it's a combination of like, by the end of the day, I just don't have energy. It's just, I don't have enough spoons, as some people would say, to do a full-time job, but I'm trying to. So I have to have a full-time job that somehow mimics special interests so that it doesn't feel like work. But yeah, I think I showed you, I started a podcast that was just going to be a comedy podcast, like, I think like 7 months ago or something. And I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'll do all my voices and all that crap. Excuse me. Hello. I was going to do the podcast. And I was also doing music. So I was trying to do some music. And I was feeling, excuse me, I'm having like weird, vocal thing or, throat things. Trying to do the music too, and then I just got like this crazy depression that hasn't stopped since. So I don't know what's going on. I need to see a therapist. But so I can't, like, there's nothing, I've tried, I try everything, and I do what I can. I'm lucky. I still like cooking. I love cooking, and I learn new recipes. I'm not bad. I can't complain. Nice. There's always something, right? What is that lyric? There's a lyric that I love to like write on Facebook so that everybody unfriends and unfollows me, from Modest Mouse, that says, cheer up, baby. It wasn't always that bad. For every drop of venom the antidote was had, something like that. Yeah. And they just repeat it over and over and over with this great like backing music of like a kind of symphony sort of really crazy stuff. And it's beautiful. And I just listen to that. I'm just like, life's really difficult. I feel like in some ways certain people just, and again, you can't compare and you have to appreciate everything. That's number one. But like, I swear to Christ, some people have it on hard mode, and you just have to like, You just have to find something. And music still helps me. I try to sing. One thing that's difficult, and you're not going to like this, Ben, I have to listen to less podcasts and more music because when I stop... I have a commute like you, and I sing in the car, and when I stop singing in the car because of depression or anxiety or the combination, I start listening to podcasts, which isn't nothing against podcasts, but I need something to fill up the background noise. So, but I stop singing, and then that builds up, like, I swear, it builds up like the pressure, and I start ticking more, I start getting more depressed. It becomes like almost like a vicious cycle. And so like it's sometimes it's like, no, stop. You need to like turn on some music, find something you like, sing it, and you need to like get this out of you, because I feel like, I don't know, if ideally I feel like if I could do music it would be best, but it's just there's no way to make a business for an autistic person out of music, sadly, it seems, unless of course creating music, and even then I'd be like horrible at it and I wouldn't make anybody any money. So I don't know.
I mean, your checklist of talents is pretty long when it comes to just, you know,
random things,
being creative, but being creative, but also, you know, having the kind of creative where you got a real product that, you know, is that there's industrial stuff behind it. I mean,
absolutely. My 3D stuff is fun. Yeah. I'm very lucky. Even the job I have now, I got to do a nice 3D photorealistic rendering of the Boston Marathon because we're kind of pitching an idea for what it will look like at the finish line.
I'm really impressed by so everything that you and I guess for people listening, I mean, you've already sent me some stuff that you've made, music, comedy. I mean, there's and you sent me your photography too. I mean, it's all really, really good. And
thanks.
It's the kind of thing where like I just feel like kind of it feels like a cheap thing to say that, like, it's the generic way to say is that whole, like, you know, like pain is good for great art or whatever. And I hate saying that's like an endorsement of going through hard times or anything like that. I don't want it to sound like that. But everything that you've kind of gone through, I feel like has made you a really powerful artist, and with multiple ways of expressing it. And I've been really, really impressed by everything you've sent me. And
thank you.
It just
I haven't made anything good yet, so don't get your don't. I'm hoping that I can, before the end of my life, do something, and then people can hear it and be like, "Oh, this is her actual potential." But problem with me was like I just threw stuff together. But anyway, but I appreciate that. No, I mean, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so much better than that. But like, it's just I really wish I could just like get my efforts together. But then it's like, what's the point? Because if I make something, even if people like it, like who cares? I don't know. I need to get on medicine and get therapy to like figure out that there's reasons to be happy. Once I do that, I will probably start making music and making art and such again. And I miss it. I really do. I was such a happy, creative person. Yeah. It's really kind of sad.
I think that stuff all too often, like almost maybe 15 minutes into, I go on these photo walks where I just kind of like, I just walk around an environment and I look for interesting things to photograph, whether it's people, whether it's colors or something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Mushrooms. Yeah. Flower or something. I like to take pictures of nature.
And it's just a really fun exercise, but like, and I'm taking photos I'm proud of. But then like 15 minutes into it, I'm like, who's going to care? Nobody's going to remember these photos, you know, after I'm dead. And it's going to be, but at the same time, it's like, I'm never going to make that photo that people are going to remember me for if I just, you know, kind of call it off by assuming the photo I take today, nobody's going to care about. And so it just kind of like, I think kind of redirects it to where I'm just going to be my own audience, or if my friends like it, or if my wife likes it. I actually, my wife is who's on my mind a lot.
You got to do it for yourself.
I want to make the photograph that I would just like to see and makes me feel good. Okay. And then I want my wife to be impressed by it, because that's kind of always a goal of mine. And but great. That stuff kind of keeps me going, I guess, past the whole like who's ever going to care sort of thing. Because I mean, all of this stuff is digital anyway, and I may print out some photos, but like when all this stuff winks out, however many centuries or decades that is into the future, and this is all gone because it's all digital storage, then
hours,
you know, like, okay, who's gonna, you know, maybe I can recall fondly the photography I used to take or something, but it's like, it's not going to be some lasting thing for the ages. It's just going to be, and I'm content where photography is something that I don't take with me when I go. Okay. It's just something I'm really enjoying as an exercise.
It's for you now.
because
Yes.
it just makes me feel good in the moment, and I may have no objective, and it's
That's
just kind of
perfect.
fun that way of just kind of burning through it without really any stakes, I guess, and then I end up making stuff I'm happy with.
That's it. Yeah. That's so pertinent, I think, is the term. That's exactly right. You're completely right. And I've said this to people. I'm like, something somewhere along the line, maybe being raised in poverty, maybe whatever. I just became very goal oriented, and I just was like, there was no do this in the moment for now. It was like I don't even know. It was like just do it to make money, do it to like succeed, do it to what seems to be this. I was just very success oriented. I didn't know what success looked like. And I kept doing different things, and I would get to points where people were like, oh, that's pretty successful. I mean, I was on a AM, FM daily talk show as the host and producer for like 7 months. That was really difficult, and I didn't like it. But and it was on health of all topics. It was called Your Health Matters in Concord, New Hampshire. But like I did that for 6 or 7 months. And I was thinking, actually, I got to look back and see if I did my sniffle or any other weird tics back then, because I think there was things I was missing too. The sniffle for sure, but I think I learned how to keep it down during recordings, because I did, you kind of, again too, you're nervous, kind of like now you're interested, so it's keeping you distracted, and it goes by really kind of quickly. So, but yeah, I forget what I was talking about again. My brain, I feel like I sometimes have like that thing where my brain just stops and resets. Memento is a movie about it.
It happens to me a lot. I have a really, really, really bad short-term memory, moment-to-moment memory. And if I'm talking or if I'm telling a story to my wife or explaining, and then like something happens or there's a little digression, I never get back on track, or somebody with a better memory than me has to put me back where I was. Like some days are better than others, but it's really been bad over the past couple of years to where it's almost guaranteed. It happens at work too. I'll just any digression where it's like the phone rings, or it's just
hard,
okay, where was I? And that's been really frustrating, and I don't really know why, or I don't think that really runs in my family or anything like that. Don't know. I mean,
it could be. It could be if you're just overtired or overstressed. That's
true.
Too. I think some people are just more susceptible. Like if I'm at work and I'm having a bad day, like it's obscene. Like I'll be looking at the screen and I'll just be like, wait, what was I doing? I'll do things 4 times in a row and I'll be like, wait a minute, did I do that? Let me just do it again. And it's not even OCD. I literally just don't remember. I'm not conscious enough. It's like my brain's just screaming to go elsewhere, and I'm just have to do this thing that seems so probably boring to me at the time. I don't know. I like what I do, but sometimes it's boring. It's a little bit too monotonous. But it's work, and that's always going to be true. And it's and that's how life is in this post-apocalyptic consumerist nightmare.
Well, God, what? I mean, is there anything I haven't asked about that because we covered a lot of great territory. Anything that you think is a really crucial part of your story that we've maybe overlooked, or something I didn't ask about?
I feel like if I just do every day my best along a path that seems really quite simple, just basic loving everybody, trying to understand everybody. Like if you do that, like things work out just somehow every day. And it's just, everybody believes like if you just give up on certain things, like the belief in the traditional idea of free will, and the belief of the traditional ideas of consciousness, and the traditional ideas of the life script of having children, getting married, this, that, and the other thing. If you just kind of like, nothing's going to go too crazy. If you just, I don't know, some of them maybe. If you don't have enough children, maybe we'll all like not have enough people to like take care of us when we're old, but don't care, who cares, don't worry about that. But I'm talking about like most things, in general, if you just kind of, people worry about like, if you let go of these certain ideas that like all of a sudden the world's going to collapse, and I just don't think that that's true, and I've tried it on myself, and it just doesn't seem to happen. So you can let go of a lot of different things, and like you're not the person keeping society in line by being mean at like somebody for acting strange. Like that's not keeping society in line. I can promise you. If you stop doing that, society's not going to change. If you stop like thinking that you need to like appease everybody, and you just kind of think about, well, what do I want? What's the best thing for, I don't know, whatever. I'm losing my mind. I apologize.
No, that was beautifully said. I mean, it's kind of funny that like love is just such a basic concept, but the expression of it is just so it's tough and weird and awkward, and people just don't want to get into it. And it's like,
because it like ends it ends everything, I think, is one thing. I think people like these stories. They like the narratives. They like the dichotomies. Because if you just love everybody, it ends all of that. Like, it's just like, okay, well, what else are we going to do? I don't blow you up. You don't blow me up. I don't know. Well, okay, let's play like Yahtzee, I guess. I don't know. People get bored with reality. And I think that's the human condition, is we're all just like, all right, well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, if you play like, if you're sitting there, if you play like, what is that game that everybody loved for a bit? Fortnite, they just put you in a place with a bunch of guns. Everybody just starts shooting each other randomly because it's like, what else are you going to do with your time? And if you kind of, if you're not really awake to like suffering as much as maybe some people are, and you don't really realize how bad things can get, and you're not thinking about that often. I mean, sometimes I'm like, what if I didn't have this anxiety? Would I just be like, how much nicer would I be? Like, my anxiety, I feel like, helps me keep conscious of how bad things are for people and how difficult life is. So I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, I don't want to do the cliche thing of saying like, it's not a disability, it's an ability. It's a different
thing. It's a way of seeing stuff differently, and there's no right or wrong. In the grand scheme of things, there can be no right or wrong, because like what's wrong for the spider is right for the fly, and vice versa.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Daphne for opening up like that. A quick PS on one part here. Daphne sent me an email with details from the rest of that story that she started about having a seizure, the seizure at work. Here's what happened. Quote, "They called an ambulance and cleared the office. I was brought to the ER by stretcher. The lights and sirens were so overwhelming. I was there for 5 hours. They injected me with something. I think it was a sedative because I had tick fits the whole time before. My wife came, and when we left the ER, the cause was marked as, quote, movement disorder. About a month later, I had a meltdown/shutdown, followed by a seizure at work, and my awesome boss helped me walk to a dark and quiet resting room with a couch. I was almost fine within 30 minutes. It's vitally important that we learn our triggers and recovery needs, because the difference between 5 EMTs suddenly appearing to take me to the ER and 30 minutes in the dark room was huge." End quote. And that's true stuff from Daphne, who was a great contributor to the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook. So if you have any questions from this episode, you can interact directly. You can also send me an email at tourettespodcast@gmail.com. I heard from some of you on Giving Tuesday this past week. A lot of you took the opportunity to donate to Tourette research and support. So check this out. The Tourette Association has a campaign going called Double Your Impact, where if you make a gift, a donation, and you do so before the end of the year, it will be doubled, thanks to the Oaksman Foundation. Go to Tourette.org to take advantage of this. If you've got $20 to give, all of a sudden your impact is $40. Or if you've got $50 to give, all of a sudden your impact is $100, and so on. It's a cool opportunity to give your money a boost when it comes to supporting the cause, or a way that you can feel like a big baller by doubling the money in your pocket. Again, just head to Tourette.org and you'll see ways that you can donate. Again, whatever you give before the end of the year will be doubled by the Oaksman Foundation. It's pretty awesome. You'll also see upcoming events at Tourette.org, including webinars, free webinars, to help you out with your TS, including a January 7th webinar called ADHD and Tourette Syndrome. And of course, you can find the details about the Walt Disney World Marathon in Florida just after that in early January. Tourette.org for details. Thanks so much to them for supporting the podcast at the Tourette Association. They're the primary sponsor. And the other fuel is you and your emails and communications. So keep it coming, tourettespodcast@gmail.com, and everything else at tourettespodcast.com. Geeks Rising is the wonderful network carrying this podcast to new audiences, and there's more for you to enjoy in podcast land at geeksrising.com. We'll talk to you next week. This is Ben.